This may come as a surprise to many, but natural resource management is not as much critter management as it is human management. Because of this, I'd regularly pass along assorted and sundry materials to a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service National Wildlife Refuge manager, hoping that it would help him address the pressing fisheries issues that were becoming more prevalent with the complexities of life. After a few years of this, he one day said, "Dave, you read more eclectic shit than anyone I know." As this video clip progresses, it should be apparent why sustaining our precious renewable natural resources will take a concerted effort by a diverse array of individuals, and effective communication among them and the public is imperative. Hi, my name's Dave Cannon, and I'm an Alaska fish biologist. Now, I don't watch much TV, and I'd be willing to bet that my Alaska is quite a bit different than Sarah Palin's Alaska. Mine would actually be much more like Joel Fleischman's Alaska, who was the doctor in the hit TV show Northern Exposure from years ago. Much like him, I drive an older pickup, a 1986, right here, that's on the frozen Kuskokwim River. I live 300 miles from the nearest McDonald's. I used to say that I was 100 miles or more from the nearest barber, but now we have a professional here, Maciel, who I think does a rather good job, don't you? We have had cell phone service now for over a year, and rumor has it that we will have a drive-through latte stand come this summer. Now, having said that, what more could a person want? Well, I know the reality is that the majority of people would not consider Aniak or rural Alaska Shangri-La. Now, one of the reasons they wouldn't is that nothing's easy out here. Now, you would hope that a mop like this, if you were in need of a replacement sponge, that you could get on the internet and order some and have them shipped up here. But I don't know why. I've ordered lots of other things through Amazon and get them, and rather quickly, but for some reason these mop replacements, they would not ship them up here. What I had to do is have them sent to friends who now live in Idaho Falls, Idaho. They used to live here in Aniak, and they had to turn around and forward them up to me here. And, you know, living here, as much as I am concerned about the environment, I very sheepishly have to admit that my ecological footprint is none too small, and I'm definitely concerned about that. Now, internet service, we have that, have had it for several years, but sometimes it's rather slow, and you can see here that rather large files might take up to or over 100 hours to download. And usually you lose the connection before too long. Now, if you happen to complain about your gasoline going up a couple of cents a gallon, consider this. We've been paying over $5.50 a gallon for several years. Now, people would say, "Dave, why do you live there then and put up with things like that?" Well, the big reason, the abundant resources, and we have plentiful salmon and other fishes. We have bear, black, grizzly. We have eagles, moose, wolves, wolverine, waterfowl, caribou at times, and that's a big reason why I'm here. Another reason, and I'm not proselytizing for any religion here, but if you check out the Quinahawk 5th grade Hallelujah Chorus, it's a YouTube clip that the 5th grade class there made about a month or more ago around Christmas time. You're going to see why I live where I live and why I enjoy living here. Now, this video is not about me or my life. It's a plea for help for a book that I'm writing about my concerns for the fishes and the environment. Unfortunately, I'm under a time constraint here and can't really expound on those concerns, but The Atlantic salmon on the East Coast are virtually extirpated. The salmon and steelhead of the Pacific Northwest in the Columbia River Basin, annually it's estimated that between 10 and 15 million used to return. Now there's less than 500,000 wild fish. We've got ever-increasing dead zones in the Chesapeake Bay, Gulf of Mexico, the Baltic Sea, and that's just to name a few. It's estimated in the next 30 years that 20 million fishing industry-related jobs are going to be lost because of overfishing. The bluefin tuna in the eastern Atlantic and Mediterranean Sea, those populations are on the verge of collapse. Suffice it to say that many of the world's aquatic ecosystems are in dire trouble. Now, what do I attribute to that? It's in the fast pace of life that is the largest impediment that humans face when it comes to sustainability. And unfortunately, there isn't a lot that can be done about that. Now, another vexing barrier to human effectiveness when it comes to the environment or all aspects of life, the human psyche, and the many cognitive biases that each and every one of us exhibit. The researcher from Harvard, Max Bazerman, he studies things like, why do even good people make poor decisions? And he says, when I look, I see some common human behaviors repeated across a wide array of issues, from financial decisions to public policy decisions to environmental decisions. There's a set of cognitive biases that seem to grab hold of the decisions and determine an outcome that is frequently not in the best long-term interest. Cognitive issues are, at least, a partial explanation for why we say one thing and do another. And here's a book, Fostering Sustainable Behavior, by an environmental psychologist, Doug Mackenzie Moore. And this may actually be the poster child example as to what the environment is really up against. On page 1, while I am concerned about the possibility of global warming, my behavior for 6 months of the year is inconsistent with my concern. Sustainable management of North American fisheries. One of the chapter authors, Paul Pajak, says, I think we need to better understand why people do what they do. And believe me, I wished I knew sometimes why I did some of the things I do. Intelligent Courage here by a fellow fish biologist, Michael Friedenberg. Conservation progress is impeded by human psychological shortcomings that repeatedly arise in difficult decision-making environments. Now, how do I plan to address the psychological component in my book? Well, I would like to come from a fish's perspective. Now, if a fish could contemplate its future, I think there's a real good chance it might get depressed. And there could be some help in that regard, because like it or not, some fish are actually on Prozac. And here in the St. Lawrence River near Quebec, there's antidepressants and other pharmaceuticals getting into the waterways. Now that article says there's over 500 million antidepressant purchases a year. That tells me that there's a lot of people trying to get in charge of themselves psychologically. And a big reason for that is that fast pace of life I referred to. Now here I've taken an excerpt from the book The Founding Fish by John McPhee, which raises the ire of my fish friend here, who has to write this very, very important book. In the darkness, I was staring instead at the black vertical rod against the disco lights of Club Zadar, which had grown even brighter with the fall of night and were flashing colors on the river. While the fish moved and sounded, and came up a little, and then sounded again, it almost hypnotized me as I concentrated on the swaying rod against the whirling colors. Gingerly, I worked it to the left and to the right, trying to move its head to one side, then the other, to confuse it and try to get in charge of it psychologically. But I'll tell you, I never got in charge of that fish psychologically. At 9:30, completing 2 hours on the end of the line, it made the reel scream as it took off downstream like a tarpon. Okay, took off downstream like a tarpon. Now, my fish won't be a tarpon, nor will it be a shad like the one written about there in Founding Fish. It's going to be much like this Chinook salmon. Fine specimen that this one is. Well, actually, it's going to be more like this one. That male Chinook there, and spawning colors, being held by Zach Liller from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. But now, my fish, if he were to read that paragraph, first thing he would probably do is shake his head, much like he's trying to shake a fish hook out of its gaping maw, and he would say, "My God, you humans, you've got brains the size of this grapefruit, and you're trying to get in charge of us and can't fish with brains the size of this pea? Come on, you've got to get in charge of yourselves psychologically." Well, on a serious note, what that fish would probably do is point out what Aldo Leopold, a visionary and very astute ecologist, over 60 years ago, he expressed concern about the futility of trying to improve the face of the land without improving ourselves first. And that is what my book is about. And we humans, we need to work together and communicate if we're going to avoid some of these ecological conundrums, catastrophes that are staring us in the face. I've been claiming to write a book from a fish's perspective for 8 or more years, long before I read Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. This is from a gorilla's perspective. Mr. Quinn starts out, "Teacher seeks pupil, must have an earnest desire to save the world. Apply in person." Now, I've always been amazed at animals' uncanny knack for predicting earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and other natural phenomena. And I'm sure most animals would sense the need for our biosphere to be saved. My fish friend, he's hoping to avert one of the greatest ecological train wrecks that mankind has seen in a long, long time. The only problem is, I don't have a penchant for prose like Daniel Quinn or other successful writers. This book here won the Turner Tomorrow Fellowship 20 years ago, given by Ted Turner, whose son happens to be a fish biologist. And this book addressed some of the environmental concerns of that time. Now, I'm hoping to do that with my book. I've even written to Ted Turner and numerous Pulitzer Prize winners asking for some help, but unfortunately I haven't heard back. Now, today our environmental concerns are that much greater than 20 or more years ago, and unfortunately there doesn't seem to be any Rachel Carsons out there, or are there? Now, I've got lots of material, in fact a vast array of eclectic material, that on the surface doesn't seem to have a lot to do with the environment, but in essence it has everything to do with it. And what I'm looking for is someone to help me pull that together. Now, you don't have to have a Pulitzer Prize, you don't even have to be published, just a talent for writing and a flair for adventure and a willingness to help me write a book that might make a very big difference someday. If you're interested, please contact me here at Eclectic Sheet, that's S-H-E-E-T, at earthlink.net. Thank you.